Listen carefully, because this might hurt more than the breakup itself. You don't keep falling for the wrong person. You keep falling for the same pattern wearing a different face. They felt magical in the beginning, didn't they? Like finally, someone saw you. But then something shifted. Distance replaced warmth. Silence replaced connection. Life suddenly zoomed in and said, "This matters." The way they looked at you, the timing of their messages, the intensity of those first conversations that all felt aligned in a way that made you believe something bigger was happening. And that's where the trap begins, not in who they are, but in how you felt when you were with them. Because what your heart held on to wasn't their consistency, their character, or their emotional availability. It was that first spark, that moment where everything felt alive. You weren't just attracted to them, you were attached to the emotional high they created inside you. Your brain registered it like a reward, something powerful and meaningful, something worth chasing again and again. And even when things started to shift, when their energy changed, when the warmth cooled down, you didn't question the connection. You questioned yourself. You told yourself maybe you needed to try harder. Maybe you needed to be more understanding, more patient, more right for them. Because how could something that felt so real suddenly become distant? So instead of stepping back, you leaned in. Instead of protecting your peace, you tried to recreate that beginning. That feeling became your reference point for love, and anything less felt like something was wrong. But here's what you weren't seeing in that moment: the intensity you experienced wasn't stability. It wasn't built on trust, or consistency, or emotional safety. It was built on unpredictability, on emotional highs followed by subtle withdrawals. And that pattern does something dangerous. It trains your mind to associate love with uncertainty. It wires your emotions to believe that the harder it is to keep, the more valuable it must be. So when they pulled away, your feelings didn't fade. They deepened. Not because the connection grew stronger, but because your mind was trying to solve the inconsistency. It wanted to get back to that original high. It kept replaying the beginning like a highlight reel, convincing you that if you just did something differently, you could bring it back. And this is where most people get stuck. They think they're in love with a person, when in reality, they're in love with a moment. A version. A feeling that was never meant to last in the way they imagined. And every time they try to hold on to it, they slip deeper into a cycle that slowly drains them. Because the truth is, real love doesn't feel like something you have to chase. It doesn't disappear and reappear like a reward you have to earn. It doesn't leave you questioning your worth or replaying conversations to understand where you went wrong. Real love is steady. It's present. It grows without making you feel like you're constantly on the edge of losing it. But when your system gets used to emotional highs and lows, calm starts to feel boring. Stability feels unfamiliar. And that's why you keep finding yourself drawn to the same kind of connection. Not because you want pain, but because your mind has learned to associate intensity with meaning. You weren't choosing them because they were right for you. You were choosing the feeling they gave you when everything was good. And you kept chasing that version even when reality showed you something completely different. Even when the silence got louder than the connection. Even when their presence became inconsistent and confusing. And every time you tried to go back, every time you gave another chance, every time you told yourself this time it will be different, you weren't actually restarting the relationship. You were restarting the hope of feeling that same emotional high again. That's what made it so hard to let go. Not the person themselves, but the feeling you believed only they could give you. It never felt like a loss at first. It felt like a challenge. Subtle, almost invisible, but powerful enough to pull you in deeper than you ever expected. When they started pulling away, something inside you didn't say, "This isn't right." It said, "I can fix this." And that shift changed everything. Because now it wasn't just about connection anymore. It became about proving something. Proving your value. Proving your love. Proving that you were worth staying for. And without realizing it, you stepped into a game that was never meant to be won. The moment they created distance, your energy didn't retreat, it intensified. You started thinking more about what you could do differently. You replayed conversations, searching for the exact moment things changed. You adjusted your behavior, your tone, your expectations, trying to become someone they wouldn't pull away from. And the more they withdrew, the more determined you became. Not because you lacked self-respect, but because your mind interpreted their distance as something you could overcome. Like if you just reached the right version of yourself, everything would go back to how it was in the beginning. But here's the hidden truth: this wasn't about connection anymore. This was about pursuit, and pursuit activates something deep inside the human mind. It triggers a reward system that makes the outcome feel more valuable the harder it is to achieve. So the less available they became, the more your brain started assigning importance to their attention. You weren't just missing them. You were chasing the feeling of winning them back, of restoring what was lost, of proving that you were enough for them to stay. And every small sign of attention they gave you, a message, a call, a moment of warmth, felt like progress, like you were getting closer. But what you didn't realize was that those moments weren't consistency. They were just enough to keep you hooked, just enough to keep the hope alive. And hope, when mixed with uncertainty, becomes one of the strongest emotional traps a person can experience. Because now you're not just attached to them, you're attached to the possibility of them choosing you fully. And that possibility keeps you invested, even when reality keeps showing you something else. You start measuring your worth based on their reactions. If they respond, you feel relief. If they go quiet, you feel anxiety. Your emotional state becomes tied to their behavior, and suddenly, you're not in control anymore. And the most dangerous part is, it doesn't feel like you're losing, it feels like you're almost there. Like one more effort, one more conversation, one more chance will finally make everything stable again. But stability was never the pattern. The push and pull is the pattern. And while you're trying to win them over, you're slowly losing something much more important. You're losing your sense of self. Your standards start to shift. Things you would have never accepted before become things you justify. You tell yourself they're just going through something, that they'll come back fully once they feel safe. But the reality is, love doesn't require you to win someone over again and again. It doesn't put you in a position where you constantly have to prove your worth just to maintain connection. What you thought was effort was actually exhaustion in disguise. There's something about mystery that pulls people in. The unknown feels powerful. When someone doesn't reveal everything about themselves right away, when their emotions stay guarded, when their words feel selective and controlled, it creates a sense of depth that isn't always real. And that's where the illusion begins. Because you don't see their emotional unavailability as a limitation. You see it as complexity. You interpret their silence as thoughtfulness, their distance as independence, their inability to open up as something meaningful, something rare, something worth discovering. And without realizing it, you start assigning value to what isn't being given. You begin to believe that if you can just understand them, if you can just reach them on a deeper level, something extraordinary will happen. Like there's a version of them hidden beneath the surface that only you can unlock. And that belief keeps you invested far longer than you should be. But real depth doesn't hide behind walls that never come down. It doesn't leave you guessing or questioning where you stand. Real depth expresses itself. It communicates. It allows itself to be seen even when it's uncomfortable. What you were experiencing wasn't depth. It was distance. And distance creates curiosity. Curiosity creates attachment. And attachment makes it harder to walk away, even when your needs aren't being met. You start filling in the gaps with your own imagination. When they don't explain themselves, you create explanations for them. When they don't show emotion, you assume it's just buried deep inside. You give them credit for feelings they never actually expressed. And slowly, you build a version of them in your mind that feels more real than who they actually are. That version is consistent. That version understands you. That version is capable of giving you everything you want. But the real person in front of you keeps showing you something different. And the longer you stay attached to the idea of who they could be, the harder it becomes to accept who they are. It's not that you didn't see the signs. You did. The inconsistency, the mixed signals, the moments that didn't quite make sense, they were there from the beginning. But they didn't feel important enough to act on. Because the beginning felt too powerful to question. When something starts with that level of intensity, your mind naturally wants to protect it. It wants to believe in it. So instead of treating the red flags as warnings, you treat them as temporary obstacles. You tell yourself they're just going through something, that they'll open up with time, that the connection is too strong to be affected by a few confusing moments. And every time something feels off, you balance it with a memory of how good it felt in the beginning. You remind yourself of the way they looked at you, the things they said, the energy they gave you when everything felt perfect. That becomes your anchor. But the truth is, the beginning of a connection isn't always a reflection of what it will become. Sometimes it's just the part that pulls you in. And when you hold on to that beginning as proof of who they are, you start ignoring everything that shows you who they're not. You justify behavior that doesn't align with your values. You overlook actions that hurt you. You silence your intuition because you don't want to lose the possibility of what it once felt like. And that's how you end up staying longer than you should. You don't walk away easily. That's part of who you are. When you care about someone, you don't just give a little, you give fully. You invest your time, your energy, your emotions. You believe in the connection even when it gets difficult. And that kind of loyalty is rare. It's powerful. It's something that, in the right situation, creates deep and meaningful relationships. But when that loyalty is placed in the wrong dynamic, it doesn't create connection, it creates suffering. Because instead of being met with the same level of commitment, you're met with inconsistency. Instead of growing together, you're trying to hold everything together on your own. And your loyalty keeps you there. You keep thinking, if I just stay a little longer, things will change. If I just show them enough love, they'll finally see it. But love isn't meant to be something you prove over time until someone decides to accept it. At some point, loyalty without boundaries turns into self-neglect, and that's the part no one talks about. There's a moment that changes everything. It doesn't happen loudly. It doesn't come with closure or explanation. It happens quietly, somewhere between exhaustion and clarity. It's the moment you realize you've been trying to earn something that should have been given freely. You see the pattern clearly for the first time, not just in them, but in your own choices. In the way you kept showing up, hoping for a different outcome. In the way you ignored what was real to hold on to what was possible. And something shifts. You stop asking, why weren't they enough for me? And you start asking, why did I accept less than I deserved? That question changes everything, because now it's no longer about them. It's about you, your standards, your boundaries, your understanding of what love should actually feel like. And once you reach that point, you don't chase anymore, not because you don't care, but because you finally understand your worth. There comes a moment, quiet, almost invisible, where everything you once chased begins to lose its grip on you. Not because the memories fade, but because your awareness grows louder than your longing. You start to see the pattern clearly, like a story you've watched too many times. The same beginning, the same confusion, the same ending. And for the first time, instead of asking how to fix it, you ask why you ever accepted it. That question doesn't break you, it awakens you. Because deep down, you realize you were never searching for love. You were searching for validation inside someone who was never capable of giving it consistently. And the moment you understand that, the illusion begins to collapse. You begin to reclaim parts of yourself you didn't even realize you lost. Your peace returns in small, powerful ways. You stop checking your phone with anxiety. You stop overanalyzing silence. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into someone else's emotional limitations. And suddenly, love no longer feels like a battlefield you have to survive. It starts to feel like something that should meet you with the same energy you give. You no longer crave intensity that leaves you empty. You start choosing stability, clarity, and presence. Not because it's easier, but because it's real. And real love doesn't confuse you, drain you, or disappear when you need it most. And maybe the most powerful shift of all is this. You stop chasing people who make you feel uncertain, and you start walking toward a life that feels certain within yourself. You realize that the love you were trying to earn was never worth losing yourself for, that your value was never dependent on someone else's ability to recognize it. And once that truth settles into your soul, something unshakable is built inside you, a standard, a boundary, a quiet strength that says, I will never abandon myself again. And that's the moment the pattern finally breaks, not because they changed, but because you chose to. If this message found you at the right time, then it wasn't just a video, it was a turning point. Thank you for staying, for listening, and for allowing yourself to feel something real. Take this with you. Not everyone you lose is a loss. Sometimes it's a release into something better waiting for you. Stay strong, stay aware, and most importantly, stay true to yourself. Until next time.